This is Ben Summer. I own and operate BandsLikeRush.com, a music discovery podcast and blog featuring up-and-coming progressive rock bands. Enjoy this video edition of the podcast and check out my own music. Visit my website at bensummer.com. If you sign up for the email list, you'll get 3 free downloads. Welcome back to BandsLikeRush.com. This is Ben Summer. You can find out more about me at my website, bensummer.com. Sign up for the email list and get 3 free downloads. This week I talked with Robert Pashman of the Jersey-based prog band 3RDegree. Last week was another Jersey, Philly-based band, the T-Club, so continuing the tradition. Robert knows those guys in that band, and it's a small world. What I really like about this band is a mix of really obvious prog angles, you know, the musicianship, the interesting harmonic rhythmic elements, etc., with a singer whose voice, whose tone and approach I really love. This guy George Dobbs, who sings most of their stuff. He sounds pretty funky and soulful, kind of like a King's X lead guy. God, I forget the guy's name, but a cross between that guy and like Donald Fagen or Steely Dan. The vocal harmonies are just really lend a weird, soulful, R&B-ish almost tinge to otherwise pretty progressive and out there hard rock. So enjoy. Well, this is Ben Summer from BandsLikeRush.com. I'm here with Robert Pashman, who is the who is the band 3RDegree, right?
Yes.
I mix it up because your website address is kind of squished. It has one of those additives online. So the band isn't 3RDegree online; it's 3RDegree.
Right.
Honestly, I can tell from your bio and profile that you're like or the lead guy, but honestly, I have trouble figuring out who's the lead singer, who's the guitarist. I can tell you're a guitarist, but what's your role in the band?
I'm actually just about the only thing I don't play is guitar. I'm bass.
Oh, fine.
Bass guitarist, and additional keyboards. I would say mostly synthesizers. The main keys, the main like meat and potatoes sort of piano and electric piano and stuff like that is the lead singer George Dobbs, and I was only lead singer on the very first album in '93. We got George for the second album in '96, and then the comeback album in '08, and we're working on our fourth record right now.
Okay.
So the lineup went from a trio to a quartet for the second album.
Whoa.
So I'm sort of like holding down the fort kind of manager sort of dude in the band.
Right. And
but on the recordings, backing vocals and bass and some extra keyboards.
Cool. So, and on your bio it shows a long history. Sounds like you guys are old high school buds who started out, way back, and you're still kind of together through various iterations, right?
Yeah. The drummer I was working with up until just recently, I got together with about in the middle of my 4 years of college. And then Pat was the guitarist who's currently in the band. He's 2 years younger, and he was just starting college. So, yeah, it was definitely around college, although none of us ever went together to the same school.
Right. So, tell me about some of your musical influences. I'm gonna in the podcast. I always include one or two tracks so people can judge for themselves. I'll pick and choose my favorites.
Sure.
But I had a few ideas when we exchanged emails first. Sound like I was kind of on track with the prog and alternative jazz pop maybe influences. But what do you dig, and what do you think you feel or hear in your own music?
Yeah, well, when I started out, in the band that sort of preceded that, I took a few songs from to start Third Degree with in 1990, the very end of 1990. It was, Rush. It was all the usual suspect prog bands. I was maybe at that point just getting into like maybe Gentle Giant, finally sort of acquiring that taste of their complexity, which had eluded me for a few years prior. But I was into all the normal bands. Yes, Genesis, King Crimson, definitely the '80s King Crimson was definitely something I liked a little better in Red, I would say. And then we added Pat, and it was 1991, and we couldn't help but be a little bit touched by the whole grunge movement. So a lot of the guitar in our first two records, I would say, was kind of influenced by a lot of what was going on there, like Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. Soundgarden the most, because they're kind of, in a way, prog. They play in odd times, and I always found them to be the best of the bunch.
Right.
So there was a weird juxtaposition of sort of my sort of 80s digital synthy sort of hangover into the grunge. And, we were always big on having a strong hook and some good melodies and lyrics. So that's sort of what the first record was all about. And you had my vocals, which was probably didn't sound like him, but I was very influenced just by the melodic feel that Geddy Lee had. So to me, the first record sounded a little bit like Rush, meets some of the grunge things that are going on, along with sort of the more synthy side of Rush, which they were sort of moving out of at the time as well.
Right.
So the mid 80s period Rush was sort of a big touchstone for where we were going, like Power Windows most specifically. By the second record, I think you had the guitar taking over a little bit more, the keyboards with us being a little more additive. And we had a much, much more soulful lead vocalist on our second album, a very strong, soulful lead vocalist that, even muddied the waters even more. And that's where you hear, he didn't write that much on that album, so it's really just his vocals. You get that sort of soulful Stevie Wonder's, 70s Steely Dan kind of thing coming in. But I think with our album that came out 2 years ago, I think that a lot of those songs sort of started right at the tail end before we broke up in 97. And a lot of that you hear a lot more because George wrote a lot more of that stuff. So you hear more of where he's coming from with the songwriting of a lot of those people. He might sort of sound like when he sings. So that's where we start sounding even less like Rush and more like people say sort of a West Coast sound, like a slick sort of Ambrosia is a good thing to think about because they were a prog band that was West Coast, but they, were as slick as any like Supertramp album,
Right.
So a lot of that sort of stuff. And then in the 90s, beyond grunge, we were sort of picking up a lot of the, a lot of the retro guys like Jellyfish and Jason Faulkner and a few of those sort of bands that were out in the mid-90s.
Let's hear a track from the band's last album, Narrowcaster. This tune is called Free for All.
Deep in every mind, there's disease. world that's a free for all. Free, dumb and deaf and cruel and raw. And breeze, act like they're above the law. Liberties, some would gladly do without. By degrees, they twist our values inside out. Until the world is a free for all. Free for all, free for all. See what it's coming to. Free for all, free for all. We've nothing more to do. Free for all, free for all. Here is the giveaway. Free for all, free for all. Who can afford to play? That's back. Thanks the steam of urban hell. There's a crack down our own Liberty Bell. Out of tune, out of thinking, out of time. People croon at the sight of petty crimes. Until the world is a free for all. Free for all, free for all. See what it's coming to. Free for all, free for all. We've nothing more to do. Free for all, free for all. Here is the giveaway. Free for all, free for all. Who can afford to play? Righteously we cry out, but who will listen? No one seems to mind you now. Your neighbors are missing, comes as no surprise now. It's your third Free for all, free for all. See what it's coming to. Free for all, free for all. We've nothing more to do. Free for all. Here is the giveaway. Free for all, free for all. Who can afford to play? Time for you today. Or do you feel afraid? Well, I feel afraid. Or do you feel afraid? Did we ever see the signs on the way? On the way.
Yeah, you know a lot. You have more exposure to more prog than I do, probably, because when you talk about West Coast produced prog, which is you're probably right. Although since Steely Dan is is closest to me, when I hear these odd and abrupt harmonic changes, particularly, which is something I don't usually associate that kind of thing with too much prog, and more complex harmonies.
Yeah.
And kind of a little bit of the funky, soulful kind of almost jazz vocal turns sometimes. That's what I was hearing in the last the stuff that's on your website, the most current stuff.
Yeah, I'm forgetting a very big influence, King's X. So with King's X, you have the soulfulest guy in the world singing on top of a heavy metal band that's like tight, tight as can be, and beyond one or two albums, they didn't really go with the song lengths too far past the 4 or 5 minute mark.
True.
I mean, that's one of the only things I don't think we've done. We haven't really gone past 6 minutes With our new album, I think we're going to get